think twice. Just do it. I wish that I had done it earlier. My parents wish they had done it, or they had sent me there to Blythe LP earlier.
I'm Agnes Stowicki, Managing Editor with Our Kids. We're speaking with insiders from Canada's leading private and independent schools to bring you insights into school programs, culture, traditions, and leadership. This includes insights from parents, alumni, and administration. This is the Our Kids Insider Perspective.
Definitely, probably the personal connection that I was able to develop with teachers. The small classrooms allowed teachers to get to know the students, students to get to know the teachers, um, and it allowed teachers to figure out how each of their students learn best. When they're only having to sort of cater to 8 students versus 30 or 35, it's a lot easier to sort of tailor their teaching to the class, but also to each student if they need a bit of extra support, which I found amazing. I think the biggest thing probably, at least for me, was small class sizes. It was a big thing for me was that, a big difference at least. I went from at my public school or public high school, there being, 30 to 35, sometimes almost 40 students in a class to, my time at Blythe where, most classes were between 8 and 12. The biggest class I ever had was 16 students, which is like, almost unheard of at Blythe LP. That was like they had to kind of cut it off there, and they almost ended up splitting the class in two, just to try and ensure that we all still got that small classroom experience. It's tough. I guess if I had to personify Blythe LP, I would use kind, caring, and I guess encouraging. They really work to have all students show like sort of work towards and find their greater potential. And then once they found what they want to do or like how they're going to do it, they really do their best to help encourage and get you to where you want to go. And get you to check all the boxes you have to on your way there. Whether that's, you decide you want to go into STEM but you've like not really taken the classes you've had to beforehand. They're like, okay, let's figure out a way to get you on that pathway so that you can get there. And on the way, if you need extra help with a certain topic, a teacher like will stay late and like help you with it, no questions asked, as long as you're engaged and um, sort of wanting to learn. I think that at least in my experience, a lot of students at Blythe LP, had similar sort of issues or obstacles with their previous school or schools, which sort of allows people or students to sort of bond with the displeasures they've had at previous schools. It also kind of just allows students to like sort of develop new opinions on school. Like for me, going into grade 11 going into Blythe LP, I at one point I had loved math, and then I went through a stage in high school where I hated math. And then, being back at Blythe LP and having a really engaging math teacher really helped me to realize that I liked math again. And that, that was something that I didn't have to dread, and I could be really good at if I had the right connections and stuff. And it's sort of like the the small environment allows students to really get to know each other, and um, it doesn't end up devolving into cliques and stuff like that. Everybody is pretty friendly with each other. I'm still very close with at least a few of my fellow alumni, even 3 years later, 2 or 3 years later. Ooh, that's interesting. I would say um, cooperation, adaptability, inclusion, generosity. And that ties into the school itself, and then the student body and the teachers. Everybody is always looking to work together, whether that's multiple teachers working together to help just one student or help a class, or just like the entire student body. um, it's a small school, but it's like a tight knit community for the most part, which sort of allows for like those sort of values to sort of be amalgamated in with and bring everybody together into the same um, sort of sphere, where everybody's working together. There's, even without being asked, a lot of students will help other students if they're struggling, and one student's better at a certain subject than another, regardless of whether they're friends outside of school. Chances are they'll help with homework or with a question, or give extra help, whether that's during in class or after class. um, and like it can, like after most classes, there ends up being almost a mini study group being formed before you go off to your next class, with the teacher there sort of helping where needed, and students sort of trying to figure it out for themselves. I guess like what I was talking about earlier, in terms of despite the fact that the school, like the student body is so small, like I think, if I'm not mistaken, at least in my time, it was probably around 80 to 100 students, um, which allows, despite that, everybody's super connected, and there's a great community there, um, and that because everybody knows each other. Chances are, even if you haven't had a class, you might not know them like super well, but you'll like be able to have conversations in the hall or in between classes, or like when when one class is coming in and another one's leaving. Sometimes there will be a bit of overhang, and people will be chatting and stuff. And that goes the same with teachers. Like there's a teacher at Blyth LP who I never actually had, but it felt like I had because we had like conversations, and he had tried to get me to take other classes, and just sort of trying to help with anything he could. Just even though we didn't really know each other in terms of like, he wasn't, I was never one of his students, but at the same time I was still one of his students as part of the greater community. Well, I mean, for me, it definitely, like, it shaped my entire path. I came to Blythe LP not liking school, had a history of skipping classes in grade 9 and 10 at my previous school. Um, and by skipping, I mean a lot of classes. My marks dropped like crazy. Um, and anxiety set in, and I had all kinds of issues with that. And then I got to Blythe, and within the first week, basically all that had subsided. I was engaged with everything, and long story short, I went from like probably would have not or just barely graduated high school, and maybe not have even gone to university, and then I ended up graduating with very high honors, and getting accepted into all three of my first choice school, or all three of my like top schools, um, and being where I am today, and a fairly well distinguished program at Carleton University with entry scholarships and all, and being able to win a scholarship that was only awarded to one person per province, and that was largely on account of Blythe, not only in that faculty, like students and teachers, but also the principal. He sat down with me. He actually taught one of my classes for a bit. He got involved. He would chat with me in the halls afterwards. And then he offered to write recommendations, and be references for all kinds of stuff, which was amazing for me. And it really did help me get to where I am. And there were certain teachers that I'd have, where there's one that I took just about every class he offered or that he taught, because I loved it. Not only did I love what he taught, but also the way he taught it. And we sort of were able to we established a bit of rapport, and I got to have a lot of fun in his classes, despite the fact that they might have been on the harder side. I still got to have a lot of fun with them, and it really helped transform me into like from someone who wasn't a very good writer at all to being a very good writer, and that sort of allowing me to be where I am in a university program that's very heavy on writing. Um, and sort of it allowed me to learn how to express my sort of arguments and opinions through writing. Um, I guess the only way I can answer that question is by saying if it had been longer, right? Like if I had started at Blyth LP in grade 9 rather than 11, it would have been, it would have been a lot better for me overall. Especially considering, obviously I didn't go through grade 9 and 10 at Blyth, but I do know people who did. And the way they structured grade 9 and 10 being differently from 11 and 12 and different from the way that, um, you know, public high schools or other private high schools structure it. And then it's like basically one core group that stays together throughout 9 and 10. It really sort of helps to build that community and where everybody knows each other because they're all in the same classes, um, out like pretty much all day for full 2 years, which is sort of, but then like you might expect that to then sort of form like a clique, or like, coming in grade 11, it being like me sort of being an outsider. That wasn't really the case. I fit right in, and I saw it with other people too that came in, in at the beginning of grade 11 or at the beginning of grade 12 or even halfway through the year, and just like seamlessly entered it. Um, and everybody brings them into the group, talks to them, gets them involved in their assignments, helps them where they can. um, and I think it would have been really cool for me to have been able to start from the beginning, but you can't change the past. You can only sort of go from where you are and make the best of it. Yeah, I mean, I'd have to start that off, I guess, by saying that, from when I started at my public high school, everyone there were a couple kids that had switched from the public high school to Blyth LP or other Blyth campuses, and I had heard of it through the grapevine, and it sort of had like a negative connotation or a negative reputation, in terms of not the school itself, but sort of it almost sort of made the student feel like ostracized, or I mean, in their place. It would sort of be like, oh, that person, they had to switch to Blythe kind of thing. Um, and so like for me at first, I was like, oh, I don't know how good this is going to be. Like, is it even a real school? Does it, you know, um, is it just sort of like where, people that can't cut it at other high schools go? Um, but then I got there and I was like, oh wait, no, this is way better than I could have ever imagined. Um, and it completely shifted my perception, in that like it's small tight knit environment that allows students to be who they are, learn the way they learn best, and sort of succeed through their own failures and through the curriculum. And my experience taking both like arts oriented classes and science oriented classes, or STEM oriented classes at Blyth, was that the curriculum, or like how it was taught at Blyth, was more advanced than at public schools. I'd have friends that would be like, oh well, you just pay for your grades, or you just pay to go through easier, and you're not learning the same stuff as us or better. And then I'd sit down with them and be like, okay, let's compare our notes, let's see what we're learning. And what I'd have in grade 12 chemistry, for example, is what or like what I was learning in grade 11 chemistry is what they would then end up learning in grade 12 chemistry. Whereas what I was learning in grade 12 chemistry would end up being almost like what people would learn in like first year university chemistry. And so like that, not only does it push students to sort of like learn more advanced things, but also it sort of sets them up better for university, regardless of what program or what stream or what um, you know type of or like faculty they're thinking of entering. It sort of like prepares them regardless. I would have to say like the number one for me is that it'll make your kids or your yeah you'll make your kids' life so much better, not only in terms of um academic like advancement, but like it'll sort of, especially if um like if your kids are struggling to fit in or to keep up, or just like are anxious at all about their current school, Blyth, sort of just zaps that, right? At least that was my experience. I know it's the experience of other people that I went to Blyth with. And that, like on day one or at the very like the latest, but like by the end of the first week, you fit in and you're not afraid to talk to your teachers or anything like that. In terms of a second reason, I'd say, it sets you up perfectly for university, as I was just saying. Um, I one of my roommates is in engineering, civil engineering, and I was helping them study the other night. And me, with just my grade 12 chemistry, was able to help them with their second year chemistry homework, and helping them prepare for their midterm exam by just sort of bouncing things off and be like, "Is that the right answer?" I'm like, "Well, based on my understanding, yeah, it sounds right," or stuff like that, and just like it helps to put you ahead of the curve. Especially in my experience, in my first year of university, there were a lot of students that couldn't write an essay or a paper because they hadn't really learned anything in public school over COVID. Um, you know, whether that was because they weren't paying attention or they weren't being taught, or a mixture of the two. Um, I was able to like sort of skip that by going to Blyth, regardless of what happened. If we went online, if we were still in person, we were still learning the same stuff that we would need going forward. Um, and I think that like even after like on the tail side of things, people that had fallen behind were able to catch up super easily. Like I was super far behind um, in math before I came to Blyth, and I was caught up within a couple weeks for the most part. Um, and that was just from going to being in grade 11 functions, not even having to use many of the extra resources Blythe provides. I had the occasion where I would talk to the teacher out of class just to make sure I had things right or to clarify things, but overall I didn't need to do that so much. And I think the third reason I'd say is that it allows students to have fun at school. It's not something that you are like, oh, I gotta go to school today. It's like, oh yeah, I get to go to school today. Whether that's assignments actually being interesting or being fun, or whether it's a teacher making a tough topic easier to handle by breaking it up into smaller sections, or taking a quick break and playing a game, or just trying to like talk to each other to sort of relax a bit. um, you know, all of those sort of aspects sort of help um, to make students understand why they're there, and like what they're learning is important. I think the biggest one for me was in grade 11 functions, are, one of the biggest things I hear from other students is like, oh, why are we learning this? I'm never going to use this. And there's, the classic joke of like, why are we learning how to calculate like whatever when, I can Google that, but like, am I not being like taught like how to do my taxes or something practical that actually will matter in life? And that was like shattered for me when at like the last unit of grade 11 functions, my teacher was like, okay, we're going to go off book here and we're going to talk about like financial um, like math and how that applies to your life, whether that's calculating interest or like figuring out how like different loans and stuff like that works. Just sort of spending that last like week or so of classes talking about like real life skills that apply to the curriculum, but that will be helpful no matter what pathway you're going down in the future. And so that I think for sure, sort of makes people like students like sort of think about, oh, I'm here because this is actually going to help me. biggest piece of advice is just go. Regardless of, if you're anxious, whether you're transferring in, halfway through the year or at the beginning of the year, or you're starting in grade 9 there. Um, don't be afraid to show up. You will make friends. You'll meet people that are a lot like you, um, regardless of like what your background is or what school you went to before or anything like that. You'll find a way to fit in. It's pretty easy, at least my experience. And don't be afraid to talk to your teachers. They will like a lot of them will actually like will come to you first, especially in like until about grade 11. But then come grade 12, they might they'll want you to go to them, and that's another way that they're trying to prepare you for university or college or just life in general going forward. But like definitely don't be afraid to talk to them. They will not bite. They will, in fact, they're more likely to give you a hug than bite you, regardless of what you have to talk about. Even if you think it's stupid, if it's even if you think it's a stupid question, just ask it. They'll answer it, regardless of whether that's relevant to the curriculum this year or 3 years ago. They'll answer it to make sure that you like have the correct understanding so that you can move forward from there. Um, and like don't be afraid to use like other resources they have, whether that's talking to teachers after class or in between classes, or talking to the guidance counselor, or even going to talk to the principal. Like he'll sit down and chat with you, check in, see how you're doing. um, and like that's the kind of thing that you know you should use, even if you don't think you need to. Just sit down, have a chat, see where you're at, and don't be afraid to talk to your teachers about where you can improve, whether that's on a test, a quiz, a paper. um, Talk to them, or a presentation for that matter. Talk to them, see where you can improve. Don't be afraid to show them like a draft of something or like your study notes. See like if there's somewhere you should be focusing more attention on or less, because they will tell you, that will help you. Yeah, like don't be afraid. Don't think twice. Just do it. I wish that I had done it earlier. My parents wish they had done it, or they had sent me there to Blyth LP earlier. Like the amount of times where you know even like in grade 11 and grade 12, even like to this day, sometimes I'll just be driving with my parents and they'll turn to me and just say, shit, like we should have put you there. We should have sent you there earlier. Like we should have just done it earlier when we saw that you were struggling. Or like, and sometimes it'll be like, we should have sent you there from grade 9, um, which sort of makes me feel a little sad, but it also like they sort of almost regret that decision, which you shouldn't do. Just do it. Don't be like, don't think twice. Just yeah, sign them up. Yeah, just I guess that like no matter like I've friends that were, applying to universities, friends that were applying to colleges, friends that were looking to go, like to the military or to like straight into the workforce. Um, and because of Blythe, they're able to get where they want to go, regardless of their path. Um, but I know that like just about everybody that I went to school that I graduated with got into one of, if not their top choice, um, which is incredibly rare, but incredibly special. I think.
For more information about this school, you can visit their profile at ourkids.net.